Just as Dr. Frederick Luboyer's book, Birth Without Violence, changed the thinking about the way babies are delivered, this new book, The Secret Life of the Unborn Child, did we get a response? No. Is a landmark in the story of pregnancy. Its author claims that mothers can actually communicate with their unborn children, and I want you to welcome psychiatrist and author, Dr. Thomas Verny. Is it a new theory?
Well, I think the way I have expressed it and brought all the scientific evidence together is very new. People for hundreds, thousands of years, more or less, have thought about the fact. Certainly women have. But since the scientific revolution, so to speak, women have become more and more ashamed and embarrassed to talk to their children. Both your guests before were saying that they don't have any problems.
Very innocent question, but how do you talk to your...
Well,
you have to lean over and
yes,
talk into your
sure.
navel, or...
Well, I don't think there's a microphone in the navel.
No.
But as long as you lean down so that the child can hear it.
Things after
Mike will be very interested. I brought a letter. I didn't know that you were going to be here. This is purely coincidence, honestly. But I brought a letter here which I thought would be very interesting, and it's a coincidence. May I just read it to you? It's about 20 seconds. During my pregnancy, this is from a lady in Colorado. During my pregnancy, my husband and I experienced a slight breakdown in communication, which naturally bothered me. However, I was determined to make my rather easy pregnancy pleasant and happy. My favorite time of day was at night, after my husband went to bed, when I would perform my Lamaze breathing exercises while watching MASH reruns of TV.
Isn't that funny?
This is purely coincidental. I didn't know you were going to be here. The MASH theme became a signal for me to relax, forget the problems between my husband and me, and I truly felt happy. Well, when my son was about 2 or 3 months old, I noticed that when the MASH theme started, my son would try to direct his eyes toward the TV. When he could turn his head, he would turn his head toward the TV when the MASH song started. Even if he was half asleep, that song always caught his attention. And when it was over, he would go back to sleep or whatever he happened to be doing.
Isn't that see what you're doing for...
Yes, certainly.
For unborn children?
I think I got a letter from this woman.
Did you? Really?
You have ratings you don't even know about, Mike.
Isn't that sensational?
Yes, yeah. I think Constance mentioned about music just when you were talking with her, and the very famous people, Yehudi Menuhin, Arthur Rubinstein, they all believe that their musical taste started in the womb. And there's a philharmonic orchestra outside of Toronto. It's called Hamilton. Boris Brott is the conductor. And when he was about 18 years old, he noticed that there were certain musical scores that were just somehow very familiar to him. And particularly the cello line, he said, would just jump out at him. And before he would even turn the page, he would know what the notes would be on the next page of certain, but only the cello. And so after a while, he went to his mother, and he told her about this, and he said, I don't understand what's happening. Why is this happening? And she was not at all surprised, and she said, the pieces that seem to be so familiar to you were the very same pieces I used to practice when I was pregnant with you.
That is amazing.
So these kinds of things are happening.
So walk softly, Constance, and play pretty music, huh?
It's true.
The book is titled The Secret Life of the Unborn Child by Dr. Thomas Verny. We'll come back after this message.
Well, the last 6 years I've really tried to immerse myself in the subject, and what I have found is truly astonishing. It was truly astonishing to me. and that is that really the unborn child is a much more mature, a much more developed kind of a creature than we have ever thought him to be until now. Indeed, I have found him to be a sensing, feeling, aware, remembering person who is very much influenced, as you have said, who is very much influenced by his environment, which is his mother.
Yeah.
So that everything that his mother eats, thinks, feels, the messages she sends to him in all kinds of ways, which we can discuss later, all this is going to influence him not only in the womb, but perhaps for the rest of his life.
You have experiments, or apparently have very dramatic evidence. Did you have a father actually talk to the baby through the mama's belly buttons, I mean, so to speak, outside the abdominal
Yes.
wall? All right.
Yes.
Hi, hello, baby, coochie, like that. I mean, nice little...
Okay, well, let me comment on the way you are saying that, okay? Because I think that really, in a sense, reflects our social attitude to fathers and mothers talking about it. I think mothers have, for years, for centuries, talked to their babies, but they have kind of done it in the closet because it was not socially acceptable. It looked silly, just like kind of you portrayed it. And I think what I'm trying to do is to persuade mothers that it's really all right to talk to their babies. It's really all right to go with your intuition, with your motherly feelings, because the baby does respond. And if you talk to mothers, and if you talk to mothers in this audience, I'm quite sure that they will tell you that there is a communication which cannot be measured physiologically, but it's there, and they will swear by it, and I think that we should take it into account.
But don't you have some experiment wherein a father who talked to the baby in utero actually had the voice recognized after the birth?
Well, I think not just one father. I think it's generally recognized that if fathers talk to their babies, or even just talk to babies in the room, that babies will sooner respond after birth to their father's voices. They'll pick up the father's voice from other voices in the room within 1 week after birth, much more.
The head will turn in the direction.
The head will turn, that's right.
If the mother is not happy about her pregnancy, if she's fighting with her boyfriend, if it's an unmarried situation, or her husband, or if the old man just lost his job, or whatever might have happened, all that's going to be in there, in that child.
I think we need to differentiate two kinds of problems. That
all right, we'll give you a chance here. He's chomping here. Go ahead.
Okay. I think we need to differentiate two kinds of situations with mothers. One is a chronic kind of what Dr. Stott from Glasgow, for example, has called a stormy marriage. A chronic stormy marriage where there are constant problems, number one, and number two, the mother must feel that she is trapped. If that is the situation, he has done research on 1,300 children, and he found that children of stormy marriages, quote unquote, those children had a 237% increased rate of mental and physiological disturbances than children of normal marriages. It's usually 1 to 2 adults out of 100 who have some birth memories, but they have been sort of too afraid to tell anybody because they are afraid that people will think they're crazy or something for remembering.
Can you remember some event that happened before you were born? It is possible. According to recent medical research, babies learn about language before birth. But that's just one of the amazing wonders going on in the womb.
There's usually 1 to 2 adults out of 100 who have some birth memories, but they have been sort of too afraid to tell anybody because they are afraid that people will think they're crazy or something for remembering. But children between the ages of 2.5 and 3.5 very often can give you very interesting information and very accurate information. There is simply no doubt about it that from the 6 months on, perhaps even as early as the 5th month, the hearing of the unborn child is as well developed as yours and mine. The child probably from the very beginning brings certain genetic predispositions into the world with him. But I think that it is very important for parents to learn to try to actualize the potential of their child and to try to build a bridge between themselves and that child over which they can communicate their love and caring and affection for that unborn child. Because then I feel that child is going to grow up with a high degree of self-esteem and is grow up into an individual who feels good about themselves. So I believe that, you know, the whole concept of bonding has to be extended into the prenatal period. And I think that bonding and communication have got to start right from conception on.
Now, you believe that, but
Yes.
how can you prove it? How can you prove that all of this works?
Well, I think that we are coming to some interesting conclusions. Obviously, we will not be able to prove it until 20 or 30 years from now, you know, when we can look at some of the children who have been part of this program and part of this kind of prenatal stimulation and loving. But we can already look at some preliminary results, and which are all very good. I mean, there's an obstetrician, for example, by the name of René van de Kar in California, who has been using some of the aspects of this program for several years, for about 5 or 6 years in California, and he has shown that the children born to parents who stimulate the unborn child, talk to them, etc., that the children develop much more quickly and much better than their siblings.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, exposing your child to the world of music is something that most parents want to do. But how about introducing Mozart to your baby even before the baby is born? Music in the womb. Well, Dr. Thomas Verny, an expert in prenatal psychology, believes that playing music to an unborn child can really have a positive effect on them. As a matter of fact, Dr. Verny and his wife, Sandra Collier, developed this CD called Love Chords. And this is a collection of music that helps parents bond with their children before birth. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, everybody hears this. Now, is there a basis for playing music to children before they're born?
Well, yes, and not just one basis. You know, there are many, many reasons. First of all, we have discovered over the last 20, 25 years, really, that the unborn child is an incredibly more developed, mentally and emotionally developed human being than we have ever given him or her credit for. And indeed, by the age of 6 months after conception, in other words, at the end of the second trimester, that child is constantly listening when he or she is awake, is constantly listening to the mother, to the outside world. And so it has a capacity to really process that information and being influenced by it. So it's very important that that child gets the right kind of stimulation.
Now, how do you decide what the right kind of stimulation is when we're talking about music? Because the baby, can it understand? It can hear.
It can hear. I don't know whether it can understand, but it can certainly react to the music. And we know one of the interesting sound is that the body synchronizes to the beat of the sound, okay? So that, for example, your heartbeat is going to slow down if you hear slow music. Your blood pressure is going to fall. And what is most important is that your brain waves also respond to the music. And what has been observed is that when you play Baroque or Baroque-type music like Mozart and Vivaldi and Brahms and many of the other ones, what happens is that you move from a beta state, which is like very kind of jumpy and irritable and fast, to a much slower alpha state, which is relaxed, aware, focused state of consciousness, so that actually your brain rhythm changes in response to the music. Now, this is wonderful both for the mother and the unborn child.
I wanted to ask you about the type of music, because culturally, of course, you're exposed to different types of music. Right. Classical, the reason you chose classical is because of what happens with the slowness and the softness of the music.
Yes, what happens in response to the music.
Okay.
And also, Michelle Clements, who's an audiologist in England, about 20 years ago did some research with children, with unborn children, and she found that the unborn child really prefers classical music, that they actually show a preference. How do we know that they prefer it? Because they seem to move in very beautiful, soft, round movements, almost as if they were dancing to the sound of the music. Whereas, for example, if you play hard rock music, they start kicking and they start sort of like protesting against that sound. And it is very obvious by watching them on ultrasound that this is not the kind of music that they enjoy.
Okay, now we've played our classical music. What do we expect as parents when the babies are born? What has this done other than relax them in the womb and relax the mom? What is this doing?
With the relaxation, of course, come very many benefits. Okay, the immune system, for example, works better when a person is relaxed instead of stressed. There are less stress hormones running around, both in the mother's blood system and in the system of the child. One of the things that stress hormones do, for example, is that they interfere with memory. They interfere with brain development. So there are hundreds of different things really that happen as a result of exposing both the mother and the child to the beneficial effects of this music. But in addition to that, what we observe constantly is that when that child, for example, is cranky or is feverish or is upset for any reason whatsoever, when you play the music that you played prenatally, that child is going to slow down, is going to relax, go to sleep, feel more secure, feel better.
Remembering the womb, remembering how safe it felt.
And there is research to support that. There was a Professor Anthony de Casper in North Carolina at the University of Greensboro, who had two groups of mothers tell different stories to their children. One was The Cat in the Hat by Dr. Seuss, and the other one was a similar story. And two groups of mothers told twice a day their unborn children the same story, story A and story B. When the children were born, they were hooked up to a little apparatus that had both recordings of story A and story B by their mothers. Within a few hours, without going into complicated details about the apparatus, within a few hours, the children learned to suck on a little baby bottle in such a rhythm that they always received on an audio tape the story that their mothers read to them in utero.
Is it memory? Or
it's memory. It's definitely memory. It's definitely memory. Yes.
Now, there are other exercises that parents can do along with playing the music, and you have a booklet
that tells... There's a 24-page booklet inside that tells parents how to use the music and how to communicate prenatally with their unborn children, but also, very importantly, how to communicate with each other, because it's very important for the mother and, of course, the child that she carries, that the mother and the father are on good terms during the pregnancy.
We are running out of time. It was great to have you here, Dr. Verny. These are available at all bookstores across the country?
Music stores.
Music stores across the country. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. My pleasure. I don't think that we should try to create little geniuses in the world, you know, little Mozarts or Einsteins or whatever. I think the important thing that parents should try to do is to create a loving prenatal bond with their unborn children.
Today, there's a growing debate over what fetuses can hear and learn. Some psychologists say there's a lot to be learned, and parents-to-be should start teaching earlier than ever imagined.
Some fetuses like classical music. Others prefer folk songs. Sound crazy? Like the Canadian psychiatrist Thomas Verny.
That child is not some kind of a protoplasmic blob. A child begins to hear and respond about the 6th month, sometimes as early as the 5th month of intrauterine life.
Dr. Verny is the founder of a prenatal psychology group. He says evidence from about 200 studies suggests fetuses are in tune with the world outside the womb.
Introducing Love Chords, a collection of classical music and creative exercises to stimulate, communicate, and enrich the bond with the unborn child. Dr. Thomas Verny, author of the best-selling pregnancy book, The Secret Life of the Unborn Child, and an expert in prenatal psychology, and producer Sandra Collier, have compiled the Love Chords collection to make every pregnancy joyous and fulfilling.
Babies really like that kind of a sound because it makes them feel safe and secure.